the minutes. Hi, Steve.
Good morning.
All right, we'll go ahead and get started. I've got 9:30. So my name's Joanna Nelson. I'm with the Economic Development Department and the chair filling in for the Cabinet Secretary of Economic Development, Alicia Keys. And thanks for joining us. This is the Sustainable Economy Task Force meeting. And today we've got a special lineup. So really glad that you're here and that you can participate. But we'll go ahead and turn it over to Felicia DePaula, who's the Sustainable Economy Task Force Coordinator and helping with the administration of the group. So Felicia, do you want to go ahead and call roll?
Sure. Stephen Moisey. Lucinda Saito.
Lucinda Saito, present.
Elaine Perea. Tom Cole. Anna Linden Weller.
I'm here.
Anna. Yolanda Cordova. Steve Verick.
Present.
Lynn Trujillo. Patricia Trujillo. Stephanie Clark. Dana, and I'm probably going to butcher your last name, but Behar?
It's Donna Bahar, present. Thank you.
And James Poviwa. Okay, that's everybody, Joanna.
Okay, great. And did you say that Tom Cole is here from? I think we didn't hear you audibly, Tom. Just confirming you are here, correct?
And Patricia Trujillo from HED just joined also.
Hi, Patricia.
Good morning.
So Tom is on, but we can't hear you, Tom. So we'll put a TBD on that one. I'm not sure why the audio isn't working. We can see your screen lighting up. All right, well, we'll go ahead and get started. Again, thanks for joining us today. We just went through the roll call. So on the agenda, the next item that we have are approving the minutes from the last meeting. I hope everybody got a chance to look at those minutes, and those are posted on the EDD website, and you can see the recordings from the past meeting and the past minutes. So can I get a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting?
So moved.
All right, thanks. That was a motion from Patricia Trujillo.
Seconded.
HED, and seconded by Anna Linden Weller. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Great. Let's move on. So we'll jump in to a status update on working with our contractor, Hatchform. And that's number 4 on the agenda and the bulk of the meeting today that we're focused on. So if you recall, this group does receive appropriation to help with the administration of the group, as well as updating the plan and helping to carry out the work and the mission of this group. And so we were able to bring on a consultant, and that is Sean O'Shea, who's joining us today with his company Hatchform, and he has been engaged in some work that is quickly coming to an end for this fiscal year, June 30th, but setting us up for the new fiscal year to begin the second phase of this work. So this is all discussion, and it's available for, obviously, in open meetings for the public to view, but I will go ahead and turn it over to you, Sean.
Great, thanks, Joanna. As Joanna mentioned, my firm, Hatchform, is working with NMEDD, Seek, and now Setforce to really lay out an actionable path forward for the implementation of the state strategic plan, economic development strategic plan, as well as the kind of in conjunction with the DWS plan. And so we're going to work together today, and we're going to use a tool called Poll Everywhere, which I don't know if anyone has used that before, but it's pretty cool. We can does everyone see the link in the chat? I'll drop it in again just in case you didn't get it. I know sometimes when you first join. So if you just follow the link, it'll ask you to for an identifier. Sometimes it will, sometimes it won't. But it'll be, everything is anonymized. So as it shows up onto the screen, it's not going to say who it is it's answering that way. So try to be as honest as possible. And we're really just kind of going to go through some questions about what are the priorities for Setforce? How does Setforce, what's the best way for Setforce to work with Seek and with NMEDD towards the real implementation of the plan? And then some other questions about, what do you feel are the highest priorities or strategies that came out of the development of the economic development strategic plan, and some other questions around that. So does anybody have any questions or having any trouble accessing the site?
This is Steve. Sorry, I have not yet. So let me see. It's in the chat.
Yes, yeah, there's a link in the chat.
That's funny. I'm not even finding chat at this point. Sorry.
I know. I had the same problem up
There's
until
so
like
many
this
different,
morning.
yeah, so many different avenues on this. All right. Well, let me just catch up.
You know what, Steve? Let me try to email it to you. Maybe that'll work.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, emailing work. I can certainly. It's not a super long URL. I can just say it out loud if you want.
Okay.
So it's just poll, POLLEV, one word, pollev.com. And
Poll,
it's
Poll easy, EASY, right? .com.
POLLEV. V is in
Letters
is in
easy.
volley.
Got it. Okay.
And then it's / Sean O'Shea, all one word, SEANOSHEA 084.
Okay.
And I just emailed it to you too, Sean. I mean, Steve.
Thanks. Yeah. I think
Hey, Sean,
is
I had a comment just to throw out there too, just to underscore the purpose of this really important work that you're helping us out with is understanding that all of our agencies are really busy. We're all at limited capacity, and really trying to nail down the structure of this group so we can be effective and understand exactly when we do get recommendations from the SEEK, what is the best way to take action? How can this group best direct and guide action? So I'm really grateful that you're helping us put those pieces together, and really curious to see what feedback we get from the group.
Great. Yes. Yeah. So this question is really, it's pretty straightforward. In your opinion, from your point of view, what do you see the the role of the Setforce as being. And so we have a great answer here, unclear to me, which is great information. Great, helping diversify the economy. And it's but no one has ever decided diversify the economy. Right. Okay. Excuse me. You'll have to forgive me. I'm my son brought home a cold from daycare, so I just got it. Now I'm still getting over it with a lingering cough. Yeah, undefined at the moment. So it seems like the diversify the economy is pretty well spelled out. And then this idea that it's a little uncertain, like why Setforce is in existence, what is it here for, what are the real tasks and duties of Setforce. And that's one of the big tasks that we have, that my firm has in this, is trying to wrap some meaning and some real action orientation around both Seek and Setforce, so that they can work together and really have a clear path forward for what they're supposed to be doing. Any agency-specific insights into this effort? Very good. Okay, I think we'll move on to the next one, and it should automatically just sort of update on your screen. And then, what are the most important outcomes of the work that Setforce is doing? I don't know, Joanna, how long has the Setforce been meeting for? It's been 5 months, 4 or 5 months?
We've had 3 or 4 meetings.
Okay. So far, what do you see as the most important outcomes? Or if you want to look at it a different way, what do you see as in the future, once maybe the committee gets going and gets a little more action under it? What do you see as the ultimate outcomes of the work? Sometimes it takes a little while. There's a bit of a delay. And for whatever reason, I can only see Joanna on the screen. So if anybody else has any questions or anything, feel free to just speak out.
Maybe that's because I had my hand raised. I just lowered.
No, I think it's just a Teams thing. Like, they only let me, when I share my screen, I can only see one other screen. No community left behind. Future laying out a roadmap. Okay. Higher education. Right, that's great. Yeah. And higher education institutions are most definitely, or they were part of the conversation, as I understand it, during the development of the plan, and are most definitely in the plan as being like key implementers for a bunch of the different priorities and strategies that are in the plan. So I think it's really maybe getting buy-in or getting them activated to look at some of those priorities and action items. Writing policy regs. And if you don't feel comfortable speaking up, that's fine. But who said the updating the state plan and then communicating outcomes to the public and providing policy recs to the legislature? Is that what in your it'd be interesting to get your take on what updating the state plan looks like.
I provided that one.
Okay, all right.
So, but just to throw it out there, updating the state plan, I think it's something that we've talked a lot about, Sean, with you being James, about being able to assess where we're at and provide some type of timeline, maybe short, medium, long term, where we're at with the action plan, as well as updating it with community feedback that we're in the process of gathering.
Right.
Of what new things do we need to add? Like we heard in the last meeting, the uranium mine cleanup effort, adding that, how does that fit in, and how do things over the next 5 years fit into the plan?
Right. Great, thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to the next one. And this is really asking, what can Setforce do, kind of grounded in the capability and capacity of the group to achieve these outcomes? What's the best thing that Setforce can do to achieve those outcomes realistically, given that everyone is really time constrained and there's a lot of competition for their attention? Excuse me. Okay. Clear action be taken. Very good. Need to be prioritized. So is this saying the make direct actionable recommendations to the legislature governor? Is that saying that this body would be that sort of conduit direct to the decision, the decision makers in the governor's office and at the legislature to really lobby and advocate, well, not lobby, but advocate for some of these, for the changes that maybe you identify as being, necessary, definitely needed?
That was my answer, I guess. And yeah, that comes out of, I'm on two task forces, this one and the climate change task force. And the climate change task force sort of, I think we see ourselves as doing some of that kind of, this is what we should be doing. We need to ask the governor if this is what she also agrees with, and then the cabinet and the legislature to sort of move the needle. But that, and also because this is a multi-agency task force here, that idea that we could, if we were making recommendations about legislation to support or encourage the development of an industry, we could very easily figure out what needed to be in that legislation from a lot of different angles, like higher education, like tax incentives, like permitting, all of that kind of thing.
That's great. It seems like from the outside anyway, one of the really powerful things about a committee like this is that you really have at your fingertips the ability to do those kinds of things and work through all the different angles of a problem and then come out with a solution that could be implemented on a bunch of different fronts. I like this: identify 3 measurable priorities that start a chain reaction across communities. You very prescient here. You know what the next question will be. Okay, we'll move on to the next one. And this is, so these are the, they're identified as strategies in the state economic development plan. They could also be categorized as priorities, sort of key priorities, and getting your take on what's your top priority? Now a couple of these questions are the same ones that we asked Seek when we did the same exercise. So it'll be interesting to see what agreement there is or what overlap there is.
Hey, Sean, I'm just
Yes.
jumping in. I think we've had a few more people join. So if you are able, if you can't access the link in the chat, let me know and I'll send it via email. But that is how you access this survey that we're using.
Great. Okay. Yeah, we can wait a little bit so that they can get on. Yeah. So the way that and I'm sure that everyone here has already at least kind of breezed through the state plan, but it has challenges and strategies, and these are the strategies, categorized as strategies. Again, they could also be sort of categorized as priorities or broad goals, possibly. But anyway, they're identified as strategies in the plan. And then there's priorities, what they call priorities underneath these strategies. And then underneath those priorities are some action items, some areas that can be worked on immediately. And they have budget horizons and they have time horizons. So there's three. They do it like like Uber Eats, where they have the $1, $2, or $3 signs, and then they have is short, medium, or long for the time horizons. Okay, I think that this is so. This is really interesting because the top two, the promote equity through economic justice and diversify New Mexico's economy, are the same two strategies that the Seek identified as being their most important. So it seems like there is a lot of agreement as to what maybe we can start working on immediately through a collaboration between Seek and Setforce, since both groups identified the same strategies as being their top, their most important. So I think that's great because we can, and then we'll ask a couple more questions now about later on about interaction between Setforce and Seek to sort of see how both can work together towards the trying to achieve some of the outcomes that are associated with these priorities or these strategies.
Hey, Sean, just one question on that. So did Seek, so you said those are the top two. Was it the same order for Seek as for this group where you got what 56% saying diversify, or was it reversed?
I can't remember the percentages exactly, but it was the number one was diversify New Mexico's economy, and the number two was promote equity through economic justice.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, Sean, I'd
Yes.
like to acknowledge that Vice Chair James Pobiwat just joined, who's the chair of Seek. So, hi, James.
Hi, everyone. My apologies for joining late. Good to see you all.
Hi, James.
And I see some other people joined, but I can see Secretary Trujillo's on. So, hi, Secretary.
Hi, good morning. Sorry I was late too. I had a call that ran long. Thanks.
Thanks.
Okay, so are we good to go on to the next one, Joanna, or should we keep this one open?
Yes. Yeah,
This one?
and again, the link to this survey is in the chat, and you can participate.
Joanna, at least for me joining late, there wasn't anything in the chat anymore.
Oh, great. Thanks for saying that. I'll repost it.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's keep this one open then for a little while and so people who are just joining in can
Thanks.
vote for their top one.
And I see Kendall, are you there? Kendall Chavez?
Yeah, good morning, everybody.
Oh, hi.
Hi.
Good to see you. Kendall, for those, do you want to say your position and your work, Kendall? Because I think we're going to invite you to the next meeting actually to talk about more in detail your work.
Yeah. Yeah,
The
thank you.
overlap.
I don't mean to interrupt. Good morning, everybody. My name is Kendall Chavez. I support the food and hunger work in the governor's office, and I'm here to just kind of observe this meeting and see how our many initiatives will interact and hopefully integrate over time. So thanks for having me. I'm just going to be kind of a fly on the wall today, if that's okay.
Great. Thanks for joining us.
Okay.
Not much change. I think everybody might.
Yeah. Okay. We'll move on to the next one. There'll be plenty of opportunity for people to respond. So those two strategies then, or the one that you chose, if it wasn't one of those top ones, what change do you hope to see in the state by focusing on that strategy? So what, and these could be pretty broad, and they don't necessarily have to be super, grounded. Just, if you had a magic wand and you wanted to really work on social justice or economic diversification, what would the change by prioritizing that strategy, what would the change be that you would see in the state by doing that work? Excuse me. Okay, very interesting. Youth here, attracting top talent. Okay. Here's median income. Those are good changes and measurable. Joanna, was that yours? No? Okay. Seems like very economic development-y. Okay, that's great. Great. And I'll tell you what, a lot of these changes, these shifts that you want to see happen in the state are, at least partially already kind of in the plan. So it's easy to tease some of these out and say, hey, we can start working on this stuff immediately. We can update, make small changes, and just get to work right away. There you go. Very good. Yeah, we had a good conversation yesterday about what an equity framework would look like, and it involved a lot of discussion around BIPOC communities and what like strategy development would look like on the ground, as far as like outcomes and projects and things go, as opposed to being dictated, as being super hierarchical, being more community asset based. Okay, this is wonderful. So next we'll talk a little bit, or ask you to answer some questions about the ways in which you feel this task force can best work with the with SEEK, with the advisory committee. So how can SEEK and Setforce work together to start implementing some of the things in the plan? And by the plan, we can take that to mean the changes that have already been outlined in the previous discussions, the strategies that were identified as being most important, and the outcomes that you wish to achieve just by doing the work in general. So what do you feel is the mechanism or the ways in which Setforce and Seek can best work together to start to achieve some of these things? Nice. Okay. That's a really interesting one, this idea that there's this two-way street between work being done on the ground and then work being done at the cabinet, governor, legislative level. Joint meeting between the two committees. Yeah. That's a good one. 3 top obstacles, challenges, and implement strategies to overcome them. Yeah, just as kind of, yeah, I think this is great. Focus areas we're seeking Setforce in line as a starting point. We'll get a little more into particulars in a couple of questions, but like, we can just talk about this out loud if you want. But more like, how do you see the like actual like mechanisms for how Seek and Setforce can work together?
Are you talking about like regularly scheduled meetings or community, like, is that what you're getting at? I'm not.
Yeah,
quite
it could be that. It could be any way that you feel that these two committees can really work together so that they're not just doing work, in isolation, but that they're really informing each other as to what's going on and what's being done.
I guess, do we have a set of like, I don't know, principles that we've agreed to? Because I feel like there's 2 committees that are established, right? But I don't know if we have like a common or a shared understanding of how we could work together. And sometimes those are shared principles, like about how we would respect each other and engage. And I don't know if that makes sense, but it out there. I think a lot of times assumptions are made that like when we have this large task to undertake, that we all are operating from the same value-based systems, and that's not necessarily the case at times.
Secretary, I have just a follow-up question to that. So we did have a conversation yesterday that was getting into identifying shared principles, a draft, or even just a framework, not even a draft. And James, correct me if I'm not getting that right, but starting that discussion. And in terms of developing those, do you think that I'm curious to get your feedback on the approach. If Seek is able to identify the principles from their group, and then that is brought to Setforce, they agree on it, and then it's brought to Setforce, or that's one approach, and then, or do you envision us both working on those at the same time? Does that make sense? And James, please jump in, because I think that's kind of where it was leading, that Seek would start the draft on those principles, and then that would be brought to Setforce to provide input. some feedback
Yes,
on.
I think that's right, Joanna, and I really appreciate your point, Secretary Trujillo. I think the guiding principles are a good place to start. And my comment here was a better interface between departments that have capacity to lend some staff to the SEEK. And we are an all volunteer committee. And so I think having some staff support some of the work would be extremely helpful. And to your point, Joanna, yes, I think it's SEEK taking a stab at those guiding principles and presenting it to Setforce.
Great. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Top priorities. So I feel like we've determined top, at least strategies, and then there can be work done to develop underneath those. What are the priorities that want to be worked on or concentrated on moving forward? And then, so the next question here is very much comes from the meeting that we had with SEEK. And this is, so SEEK was interested in breaking into smaller working groups and then having those working groups concentrate on a specific priority that's underneath one of the strategies. And then possibly having a member of Setforce whose department is directly related to that strategy or that priority, or responsible within the plan for implementation of it, kind of sit as part of that working group. So there could really be these joint working groups where within that group, Setforce, the member of Setforce could lend insight into how the department operates, right? How they could best get that message to the governor, to the legislature, how they could devote resources to implementing some of it, and then the SEEK members of the working group could bring in more information about sort of on the ground community development, asset-based development insights, so that they could really really attack it from both sides in these smaller groups.
I mean, I said the responses there. I answered yes. I mean, I think, of course, it's a matter of time that people have available, but I think it goes back to the previous question that you're asking about interfacing. It's a different type of interfacing that's presented here when you have people being a part of these specific working groups. So I think it's a good idea.
Great. No one wants to be the lone no or maybe. That's okay. There we go. Maybe.
Or it depends, maybe.
Yeah, is that maybe because you don't want to be part of just another group or another thing you have to do every week, but you want it to have teeth?
Yeah, I answered that, and it is that I want to make sure it's a meaningful outcome.
Right. Great. I think that's very good, and that will be built in.
And it matches, and also it matches the expertise. If I'm in a group that I really can't support, then. Yeah.
Right. No, absolutely. Yeah, I think the idea would be kind of really trying to pair Setforce members with a working group that they have like legitimate concerns with. So they could, really take that information and try and act on it, even immediately, maybe if it's something that's kind of easy to do within the department. Okay, so we'll pull in the next one here, and this is so has your particular department, division, part of the state started working on any action items outlined in the state strategic plan or the DWS Clean Energy Workforce Plan? So are any of these things guiding your work?
Hey, Sean, just a comment to throw out there that there is, there possibly is action being taken, but not necessarily driven by the two plans that those efforts are already in place. So I think that's an interesting distinguisher to focus on. Is there acknowledgement or focus on implementing the plan, or is it just already in alignment with, not even in alignment, but already being carried out? And I think that's just a comment to throw out there.
No, for sure. I mean, I don't know. Not aware of the development of the plan, but like oftentimes they'll put stuff in that's already being done as sort of a clear win to say, hey, you know what, this is already happening. So that could certainly be true.
Yeah, and I think Joanna's comment was a really good one, because I'm John with the State Land Office, Steve, and so I'm just thinking about what we're doing. And I mean, they're not necessarily distinct, right? I mean, so there's things that have been occurring already that also are congruent with, with objectives that are laid out by the plan. But they didn't necessarily start, when the plan was done and we read the plan. But also, we've reviewed the plan, and we're putting more emphasis into certain things. Not entirely because of the plan, but partially because of it. So I think, I think it's important. Let me just give you an example. Like, so in the commercial division, renewable energy generation is within that. And so we've had a renewable energy office for about 2 years now, but it's really starting, to hit stride. And it's, obviously what it's doing in terms of generation and some of the other parts of the value chain are really consistent with a lot of the, specific recommendations that are in the plan. We're doing more economic development leases, and that's in the plan. They make better use of state lands and stuff like that. So we were doing it, but we're going to be doing even more of it, and partially because we want to be consistent, obviously, with the overall state's plan.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you.
And then another comment to add, I think that in terms of the timeline, if we're focused on July, in the summer months, July and August, to really assess where our agencies are at or where EDD is at, I think a lot of that will help with the interface and informing the discussion or the framework of how we are communicating, not only with government, but with public, about where we're at and what's in progress and what's on the horizon. So to me, that's an exciting next step of this, to help get it more into conversation with our agencies.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, you don't want siloed efforts, right? That's the point of, I imagine, one of the points anyway of having these two committees is that there's open dialogue and communication about what's being done. Okay, so we're going to skip one of these questions, but we're going to go to this other one. And so what successes have you had, or has your department had, in the implementation effort. So this could be whether or not it was, was already started before the plan was written, or it sort of is tangentially related to the way that the plan was laid out. If there's something in there about, any of the strategies that are listed in the plan, what has the success been in trying to implement some of those efforts? And this would be not necessarily for Setforce, but for the individual departments, agencies, divisions. Oh, this is great. Okay. Yeah, and that's right from the DWS plan, right?
Which is where it came from. I think that was one of the first things that's in our Energy Conservation and Management Division in Energy, Minerals, and Natural Resources, where I work. And I mean, I think the first training programs will actually come online this fall, but we've been working on them for a year, like doing curriculum development, and we got a grant from the federal government to help do that. So
that's great. Any other implementation successes? Sometimes there's a bit of a delay. Oh, yeah, that's great. Communicating efforts around implementing the plan has been successful. Is that whomever put that will be hoped to be communicating our efforts around implementing our plan? Okay. Any other successful implementation efforts?
We are engaged right now in quite a bit of focus on increasing access to capital for businesses and equalizing the playing field in the public and the private space. So we've had some, hopefully today or tomorrow, we have like an online platform that is getting launched for businesses. And then we've had some recent movement forward with our Fund It group to help identify funding sources for communities on economic development projects. And then the creation of our JEDI office, those feel like 3 direct successes, or at least progresses around strategy number 3.
Yeah, I mean, the credit enhancement is like specifically spelled out in the plan, or expansion of credit enhancement.
Yeah, Ellen did mention some federal funding coming to MNERD, and the credit enhancement program is set to receive a lot of money through the ARPA Act. So that's really exciting to have that federal support to carry out the efforts.
That's great. Okay, so that goes right into the next one, which maybe there'll be more comments on this one. The challenges or roadblocks, bottlenecks, et cetera, that you've experienced in your implementation efforts. So have you tried, or has it been sort of a concerted effort to tackle one of the strategies or one of the priorities, and then there's just been a lot of resistance, whether or not it was like purposeful resistance, but still there has been some pushback or just problems with the implementation effort. And these could really be, they could be structural. Yeah, limited staff capacity, limited time to organize the effort. I feel like every, that comes up a lot, right? Everyone is very time, people are undercapitalized on time. No real sense of prioritization or process of reporting successes. That's very interesting. So is that something that maybe Setforce could work on, as being that place where successes are reported?
Yes, I would hope so. I think somebody had said it in a different comment that using this group and maybe that was you, Anna Linden, that said comparing it to the climate change task force of using this as a channel to help communicate successes and other data.
Yeah, one of the difficulties, I guess, that I have as MNerd's delegate to this task force is knowing what I know the little pieces that go to MNerd, like the clean energy, energy efficiency worker training stuff, because we were going to do that anyway. But it's hard to see the big picture. Just reading the plan doesn't tell me who's responsible for doing what. And that is something that makes it difficult to figure out how to collaborate well, because I don't know what the priority is or the direction.
Can I ask a follow-up question on that?
Sure.
The no real sense of prioritization or process. So within the plan, we have the 6 priorities, the 6 strategies. It really weird word choice there, but I think we call them I always go back and forth, but we call them strategies, I think. When we talk about a need for prioritization, do you see this group, because this came up with the seek of further filtering those 6 strategies into an even smaller group of priorities? Is that what
sort
this
of
is?
but
meaning?
not exactly.
Okay.
Like, I don't think it's definitely not a request to put those 6 priorities in 1 to 6 order. That's not what I'm looking for. It's even those 6 big buckets are really big. There's a million things inside each one. What happens first? Like, is the direction to work on comprehensive clean energy tax policy? Is the direction to work on incubators and apprenticeships? Like, I don't get that sense. Like, what first? Not what, but what first?
And a follow-up question to that. So we have the action plan that does lay out the specific actions for each priority under the strategies, that does outline, okay, here's something that DWS is working on, or state land, or MNerd, et cetera. And the thought, and you all let us know and provide feedback on this, but the thought was that we can at this point engage in that assessment effort, at least to check in with the agencies and be able to provide the overview of where are we at, because that somebody said that, yeah, not sure what everybody else is doing, to provide that communication of what's already been done, what's in progress, what's next based on that action. And this is just personal thinking, but perhaps that is going to help lead to this discussion to inform, okay, out of this, what is the priority? Because where are we at? We don't have a sense of where we're at yet. I'm curious to get your feedback on that, how that would help with the no sense of prioritization.
I think it would help somewhat, but I think like, and this is again, like maybe just personal for me and it may be different for other people or other agencies. It's like I feel like we have a very large menu of very good food. And I genuinely don't know if I'm responsible for bringing the salads or bringing the dessert. Like I want someone to tell me, like, okay, here's the things that we need to work on this year. And I mean, it doesn't need to be like we don't need the governor to come and like say, okay, we're going to do this. We do need to actually like decide what everyone is working on as and in what way. But I think this partially comes out of like I'm thinking about this a lot in a lot of different venues. It's not just here.
I also want to say, like, I agree with Anna in the sense, like, when we get when agencies, and appreciate the foresight of the governor, but like we get handed these really big initiatives, right? Which is great because we're trying to make monumental changes. But I think for us as agencies, it's like, how do we break that apart so it's manageable and we don't get overwhelmed? And it's like not taking the approach like everything at once, like and maybe the governor's vision of the world, right? Everything should be going on at once. But I think having some sense of like, how do we start to tackle something this large is really important to discuss. And because then what could happen is you don't want people who are volunteering their time to other folks who are partners to get tired out. Like that also happens where people get exhausted from all these different task forces of stuff. And we really want to focus on, I think, you know, what is it that we could maybe tee up that we could have some successes on and move forward. I mean, I don't know if that's kind of what you're talking about, Anna Linden, about like focus, kind of getting some sense of that, because realistically, I don't know if we can work on everything at the same pace for the whole plan. I mean, for us as a small agency, you know, we can, it'd be helpful for me to know where we can focus in on and time allocation and resources, because many of us are involved in a lot of other larger task forces and initiatives. And so in terms of when I'm trying to figure out capacity and time and resource allocation, I'm trying to figure out what that means for me and our team and this task force and what we need to kind of do, as well as like the other kind of larger initiatives that sort of tie in, like the climate stuff that we have. That's also another big initiative too.
Thanks for that, Secretary. I think, and Anna Linden, because we have to start somewhere, and right now we don't have that tee up or that check-in of where we're at. So I think that would help guide, because a lot of this, it feels like we're already doing. Maybe that's just that EDD, but not to create additional burdens, but to help lightly guide and then be able to be checking in and getting feedback from each other. I see there's a hand up and I can't see the name on it. So go for it.
Hi, this is Lucinda Cito from Taxation Revenue, and I just want to thank Anna Linden for verbalizing a comment I had earlier about a roadmap. Just having, because you can always change the direction, but just having some direction, and being from the Taxation Revenue Department, to echo Anna Linden's comment, like if we have an idea of where we want to focus on initially, we would then structure our tax policy around that and all the tax incentives and ideas that could come if we have an idea of where to start. Because yeah, it's a vast universe, and people's ability, all the competing competitions for tax legislation, it would help us know where we could put some research effort.
I have a dumb question, so apologies in advance, but is that not so once we have this action and we have these these strategies. So isn't that identification of the priorities, is that not coming from the particular agencies? Would that not come from TRD, where you're seeing, here's the strategies, here where we're called out, or here's where we could take action, and then that would come from the agencies to this group of, this is these are our priorities and this is how it fits in?
I'll just speak from the position I'm at. What I see is just surviving, prior sessions and where legislation was passed, and then a lot of our energy is into cleanup of tax legislation. And so unless and maybe it's just, my limited participation in this group so far, knowing how to help my leadership, but a lot of it comes from the governor's office, so I guess we have so much competing efforts that we need help. I need help, I guess, as a representative on the task force to help direct things back up versus things coming top down.
Because even just a comment on that, and again, I'm speaking, trying to keep an open mind, and ask questions, but so even at a place like Tax and Rev, we're able, maybe that would be a helpful leveling point where we're with the group. Okay, here's the strategies, because Tax and Rev is already doing things in alignment with the plan, and I think that's where we're getting at, wanting to understand what everybody else is doing and being able to collectively show, look at the great things that TRD is doing already in alignment, and TRD being able to communicate with the group, and this is what we have for next steps that are in alignment with these strategies too. And maybe that's that, perhaps, and I'm throwing that out to the group, would that be helpful to have some type of a rehash, or here are the strategies again, and I think this is, I'm kind of jumbling my words, but this is what I understand working with Sean and his organization is next steps. July is really this assessment and checking in with the agencies to intimately say, okay, here are the strategies that are in the plan. Where are you at? And then we can compile that too. And it's not more work. It's just making sure that we're communicating with each other as well as public. I could be completely off base, but just throwing that out there for discussion.
Hey, Joanna, just to, if I could ask another question to that, just real quickly. Well, at the beginning of the formation of this task force, was there a review of the plan, or was it just sort of assumed that everyone had read it and kind of took it in?
We'll put air quotes around it. It was, I think, both. We threw that out, but yeah, even this comment that just came in, I don't feel connected to the work. I don't know how I can't speak for the group, but we're all really busy. How intimately are we connected to the plan? I feel like that is a really broad spectrum. And it was very high level. I think that the plan got presented to both groups, SEEK and Setforce. And I'd love feedback on that too from the group.
So I have, if I can, as a secretary for an agency, I was really surprised to hear that we should be working on these strategies, because I didn't know that there was any communication of like, hey, it's your responsibility. Like, there was the overview of the plan, which we kind of did, but as cabinet secretary, we have not been doing anything to further this plan, because there was no communication that said to me, hey, Indian Affairs, you as secretary and your team are now responsible for doing X, whatever X is. And I pulled up the plan, and they're very broad, which is great in some respects because it provides flexibility, but it also makes it challenging for us as agencies. As to the person from TRD brought up, we have many competing, things going on and directions coming down to us. How am I supposed to figure out, like, of all these, what am I going to focus in on? I think that, so Joanna, to your point, it was not clear to me as a secretary for an agency that at X time I was supposed to get staff or myself to begin implementing some of these, because I don't have any updates or can tell you where we're at in the implementation of these strategies or which one would be a priority. So there was, at least for us in terms of IAD, not that connection drawn.
Thanks, Secretary. And I probably didn't convey that well. So there hasn't been any communication with any secretaries about this. So you're not, no, outside of just publishing the plan, there has been no communication. And I think that's what we're trying to figure out here is what is the next step and how do we feel connected to the work? So does that help? Did I confuse people? Did I convey, sorry about that, Secretary, if I'm conveying that conversations were had with agencies about you should be doing this or we're going to have an update?
No, I think it's just good for us to have a shared understanding, going back to something that we were talking about previously, right? I think it was in one of those questions about, we started with how do these two groups work together? I think for us, it's we shouldn't have assumptions and we need to have a shared understanding and just clear communication. And it's just something for us, that's the mechanism I think that somebody was asking about, always having clear communication where we're at, making sure we're bringing everybody along at the same place. And because also you're having people kind of join into some meetings and then not. And I heard somebody say, what's the best way as I'm getting up to speed to support my leadership and knowing what we're doing. And I think it's more just that, Joanna. It's just, and please don't take my comments as being critical. It's just also wanting to provide helpful feedback of for me at least where it's landing so you can understand. And I just don't want to have any assumptions because it's a lot of work and you're trying to coordinate a lot of people coming together.
I really appreciate it. And I say bring on the critique and I think this plan too, for my personal opinion, is a starting point, and let's have uncomfortable conversations and let's be critical so we can get to that shared point of view. I really appreciate it. Bring it on. Keep them coming. Hey, Anna Linden, I think you're.
So I want to second what Secretary Trujillo said in the sense of not having an affirmative sense that from on high, and maybe on high is Secretary Keyes, maybe on high is Governor Lujan Grisham, that we need to be doing specific things. And I think it's probably easier to start doing specific things in EDD because this plan is an EDD document and therefore is live inside EDD. I think it's probably easier, say, in MNERD, when we do climate work, it's easiest for us because we built the object, so it's easy to see how to use it. So I think what would be incredibly helpful as we move towards this sort of stock taking moment and then hopefully what next with specific direction is to have that the direction that Secretary Trujillo was talking about. Hey, IAD, hey, DOT, MNERD, whoever, here's your piece of the pie. However you want to do that's up to you guys, but here's your piece of the pie, go. I really feel like we need that.
Thank you, Joanna. This is the last question that I have, so I'm going to stop presenting so we can all maybe see each other a little bit better. Here we go. But Joanna, did you have anything else that you wanted to to add as the meeting comes to a close?
Just another idea to throw out, and I'm curious, based on Secretary Trujillo and Anna Linden's comments, as well as Lucinda. Does it make sense, knowing that the agencies are stretched and capacity, does it make sense to use this? And again, I'm just throwing this out there, but use this group where it more is an aggregate, and it's a collective to have these conversations and be able to collectively show this is where the agencies are going, but it's not necessarily, it feels uncomfortable, again, just me speaking, but for EDD or for the plan to say, okay, you have to do this. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's a framework or it's a guide. And then this group is able to base, if there are policy recs coming from this group, or if there are updates to the plan that are coming from SEEK, is that a solid task of this group to just be able to collectively communicate here's this loose guide that we have, what's happening in this space from our agencies, and we're checking in regularly with the agencies on what's happening.
I think that'd be helpful, but I view it really more like just a facet of what we could be doing on this. Mm-hmm. And I think part of the challenge would be, just speaking from my perspective, would be the plan. I think it's a good plan. I mean, there's so much in it. And I managed a group when I was in Austin that did plans for state government. So I have some point of comparison. It's like, wow, there's as much in this plan as we used to do, I mean, and there's so much to do. And I mean, the thing is, as I looked at it quickly initially, it's like, yeah, some really good ideas, frankly. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. There's just so much to do. And then, as has been mentioned by my colleagues on the phone, we're all super busy right now already. So it's really hard to go ahead and just filter through everything. And so that's where I really feel like prioritization is really important. Like, okay, out of this, there's hundreds of recommendations in there, right? Either explicit or implicit. And so out of all that, what is going to really move the needle the most in terms of diversifying the economy and, gaining ecological, environmental, benefit or improvement, right? And so I think that's something that we could all do in conjunction with James's group, the advisor group, would be, okay, out of this, whatever it is, 300 to 200 recommendations, what are the top 10 things that we could be doing? And I really feel like that's probably the most important thing this group could do, because it's not a matter there isn't enough there. There's too much there, right? And so we've got to be able to pick through it and say, what should we be spending our time on? And maybe we're not doing that in isolation. I mean, certainly the advisory group, I mean, still, I think I mentioned this first meeting, I mean, as a person who spent most of my career in economic development, I mean, we've already got a group there, the IDEA group, Joanna, as you know, you got an economic developer essentially in every community and county and the state that could be working with the advisory group. They do this as a day job. Every year they develop recommendations, maybe go back to them and say, hey, work with James and his group as you look at this and as you put your legislative schedule together, what are your priorities, and get those to us, and we'll look at those as one source of feedback on this thing. But I just feel like we've got to distill this thing. It's just, the biggest risk in my mind is doing too many things not well enough, and I think this group can help do a few things really well to really help us have some impact. And so I think everything else I really agree with. That's some really good points. But I think that's where maybe we could be more engaged and spend more of our time.
Thanks, Steve. Great comments. And Dana, I see your hand is raised from Environment.
Yeah, so this is my first meeting, but just listening to the conversation, I think maybe as a group we can, use the poll EV to go through all the recommendations and rank them as a group, so we refamiliarize ourselves, and then, I mean, it'll just make us more, of course we do our homework behind the scenes too, but then as a group come in and say, maybe these two are duplicate, maybe this is this well house and this is this well house. And then it might also bleed into the idea of the, being a representative on the SEAC. So I just think, the exercise we went through right now was helpful. And if the plan is so overwhelming, maybe we just need to revisit it and prioritize for ourselves, or just, yeah. So I guess I'll stop there.
Thanks, Dana.
I guess I'd want to sort of add that I'm not sure, for me at least, it's not that the plan is overwhelming, it's that I don't know exactly what level of prioritization this plan should have in MNERD's prioritizations. Like, the plan itself, I think, is pretty great, like very large scale, but pretty great. But figuring out what to bring back to my agency and our leadership and be like, okay, so this is what economic development thinks that we need to be concentrating on when we do economic development. That's difficult because I don't have that direction.
So maybe those are the drill down questions if we were to do an exercise like that. I mean, it's just a suggestion. I need to do my homework too, so.
Hey, it's James. Really quickly, I just wanted to say that I really, as someone that is not working in state government right now, I really appreciate this conversation. And also just want to recognize the hard work that you all do in public service, and that you're asked to do way too much with not enough resources. And similarly, I think I came into this conversation thinking, oh, well, maybe there are some staff on hand that may be able to support our volunteer committee. So I'm glad that this conversation is maybe headed in the right direction to figure out how to work collaboratively between the two committees, and look forward to figuring it out.
Thanks, James.
So Joanna, that's all that I have as far as the facilitated discussion goes. And I appreciate everyone's time and everyone's honesty and your input. And I think this is really crucial to making this a body that's going to actually push things forward. There's a lot of good recommendations here for how to start getting work done, and feels like it's very close.
Johanna, can I ask, and I might have missed it and buried in my emails. Do we have a timeline of some sorts, I guess, maybe too, just for our awareness? It kind of helps us, right? Going back to what people were saying about priority, if we all have our own agency priorities, right? Because we all have work that we lead ourselves, and then we have work that we collaborate with other people. So in trying to figure out that, and then the timeline. And I also appreciate somebody mentioning maybe another lens to look at this plan is we have a 60-day session that's going to be coming up. We're heading into interim committees. That really maybe is another level of maybe a frame, like not losing the original frame that we have and not saying let's reprioritize, but we also have to be realistic. We have an opportunity coming up. So what is it what is it that we can lay the groundwork for, or we should be thinking about and working with our secretaries and the governor's office about interim committees, and what do we need legislatively to help us succeed to meet some of the goals of this plan? To me, those are things that we should start talking about and teeing up and working with the SEAC about too, right? And they're getting their feedback. That's one thing, but also the timeline, Johanna, about, what is it, and knowing that can change. What are the expectations from your leadership, from governor's office about how this plan is going to get moved along, right? Mm-hmm. That might be also helpful in terms of the rest of the agencies knowing what that looks like in terms of the rest of this calendar year and planning for our next fiscal year, right? Our new budget's coming in. What could we talk to our secretaries about? Or you could talk to your secretaries about. For me as a secretary, thinking like, oh, if I need to put more money in the 300 category for contractual services, because I'm going to need to get moving on some of these things in the plan, I need to start planning for that, right? Same thing with folks here. So I think it's something to think about in terms of the timeline, knowing it can change. But I think that also would be helpful if that hasn't been produced. Just a couple of suggestions.
Thank you, Secretary. I think those are great, and it helps kind of summarize, I feel like, a lot of the points that were brought up today, and that's brings Sean into the picture too, and the work that he's doing and helping to compile the feedback from this group. So at the end of June, we'll have a really great starting point to be able to level and share with the group.
Yeah, I think it also on a high level, like kind of sets like, here's the meetings, here's some, and giving people a heads up for deliverables or when you might be asking for something, because that, especially if your secretary is having to communicate back to the gov's office about what the status is on something, your partners need a head up, right? These folks here need to get their work done. They need to talk to their secretary. They got to get approval. That takes time. Everybody's busy. So you got to just like make sure that people are ready so that when someone, if we have to provide some type of status update, that's what's happening on a couple other initiatives that I'm working with other cabinet secretaries on, that we have that kind of expectation. That's part of our internal timeline. We don't really necessarily put it out for public, but I think that's really important in terms of that communication, accountability, and collaboration just internally.
Great point. You know, something to throw out there too, again, and this is something that has come up with Sean, and I'll try to keep this really brief, but if we are thinking about the efficacy of this group and understanding the need for clear communication, et cetera, the great points that have been brought up, 3 buckets kind of emerge in my mind of being able to channel the work that's being done from SEEK through Setforce, and one of those, I'll share this visually, but just throwing them out there is first is that assessment of the plan. So again, checking in, where are we at, having that communication with our agencies and understanding here are the strategies that have been laid out, what's in action. And then the second one was implementation. So it's that communication with not only internally with agencies, but it's also with our communities too. And that's something that SEEK is really focused on, is gaining input and identifying challenges with our communities to align and implement the plan. And then third, this is what you brought up, Secretary, is the policy recs. So understanding what are their recommendations that are coming from this group or from SEEK. And those are the 3 channels that are emerging, at least for me, that could help to categorize the actions and the work from this group so it actually is going someplace. Am I missing anything, and I can provide this visually too to get your feedback.
I think that encapsulated pretty well.
The big one, I think, that has been, I know James and Sean and I have been, and SEEK have been focused on, is that community implementation part. That's a whole nother ball game. When we hear from communities that want to align with the plan, or how they come to EDD, how do we diversify the economy? Basically, this huge question. But all right, well, we'll continue thinking on it. I know we're up against the clock. And really appreciative of the feedback. And I'm really hopeful that having Sean on board, working with James and the great folks at SEEK, we're going to have some really solid organization recs and address a lot of the challenges that have been identified here. And please keep the critique open. Keep it coming. No personal feelings in this at all. Let's make this the best we can. So
great. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.
Very good.
Thanks all. And the next meeting will be, the next official meeting will be August, the third Wednesday in August. So go ahead and send out that invite if it hasn't already been sent out. And then hopefully I would assume that we'll be in communication prior to that. All right. Thanks all. Thank you so much. Thank you
Thanks,
for what you
Jana.
do.
Thanks.
Thanks for
very
your
much.
time. Bye. Take care.
Bye.